Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name's Sharon Hurst and we're going to paint a cat's face. Just half a face because I thought that might be a little more interesting and a little less work. Come and join me and we'll get the paints out. See you in a minute. Hello, here we are. Let's get started. I've drawn my cat out. Now this is entirely up to you, everybody. You can either draw him freehand, and I'm sure many of you will be fantastic with that. But if you're unsure, please don't stress over it and don't have a problem with using something like trace down or tracing paper. So many people say, oh, I can't draw, and they won't try, and therefore that will put you off even having a go. And you really mustn't do this. Get in there, get stuck in, and whatever way it takes for you to do this, please have a go. Now I'm working with, this is Bockingford, it's 140 pounds, 300 GSM. And I quite like this particular paper because it is very good and easy to slide the colours across it. It glides, it works well, and I don't have an issue at all with paint sinking into it so quickly that I can't work. It's also very tolerant of something like masking fluid, and I want to use quite a bit of masking fluid with a picture like this, so we need to be aware of that as well. I have my drawing here. I've stuck it down very well. I've used brown gummed tape rather than a masking tape. I'm going to use quite a bit of water, and I think with this I would find that this would lift, and we're going to use a hairdryer, so it will lift with the hairdryer. I'm going to avoid that for now. My palette's next to me on my right hand side, nice and easy to work from. Water up here above me. I have a picture of the cat, and I have that in actual size. It's the same size as my drawing, so I know that I'm working like this life size as such. And on my iPad I have the picture of the cat because of course there I can enlarge it, I can really look at it and understand what I'm seeing, and it's a nice bright image. I know therefore that this picture is going to be good for what I want to do. We're ready to start. The colours I have, I'm going to think about burnt umber, raw sienna, and this is just a little touch of Payne's grey. With every painting I do, this is my recipe or menu. I want to put that here on the side of my picture, and I'm intending to use this to try out my colours. So if we do that and we have that there and ready, then I can just try my colours and keep it, because in future if I have a particularly good colour there that I use, I can always refer back to this and see how I made it. If it's a good colour, write it down underneath the mix. Looking at our cat, now let's just bring him over so that we can see him carefully and really study him. If we look at the colours here, we think originally that it's white. I don't think it is. I'm looking at this gorgeous kind of cream colour here on my kitty, this cream. And it's everywhere. I can even look at his little mouth and I can see that colour underneath on his lips. The only white that I would perhaps contemplate putting on here might be some here and a little bit through here. I can put that on afterwards. What I want to do now, I think, is go into this picture and just underpaint everything this pale beigey cream. Let's see if we can make it. Let's see how we can make it. I'm going to use, this is a number 8 Kolinsky Sable, love it, one of Rosemary's brushes, and let's take this raw sienna and look at it and see what we think. It's very yellow, it's very bright, but this is a nice transparent colour. I can see through it, and that means that I can layer colours on top of it and I won't have an issue. I need to knock it back a bit because that's too bright. So let's have a little play. Add maybe a little bit of this burnt umber. The paints I'm using are Winsor & Newton and Shin Han, mixture of the two together. Artist watercolour in both instances. We're going to need to have this very, very thin and very, very pale. So let's just play and fiddle. A bit more of the yellow. And now I want to knock it back a bit more, so I'm going to take some Payne's Grey. And everybody, when you use Payne's Grey, again, please use the artist watercolour. It's a nice bluey colour. Same pigments that make up indigo, believe it or not. You don't want to be using something that's dull. So artist colour, watercolour, Winsor & Newton, good colour. Now, that looks very, very bright. It's still quite bright, but if we bring it over here and we put some on there, we're getting there. We're getting there. I think I might like a little bit more of the yellow. Much more water. Just want to lay in this. I don't want white. I'm not looking for white. Let's thin that a bit. See, there I am. That's where I want to be. Almost so pale that you can't see it. First thing we'll do, now we've made the colour, I might need a little bit more, everybody, so hold on. A bit more of that. Bucket chemistry, look. Ha ha. And a bit more of this. Okay. And lots of water. Lots of water. Okay. Clean the old brush. Dry it. Always, always, I work with a cloth on my lap. Always, always. It's towel cotton so that it absorbs everything. Don't have an issue, therefore, with drips and drobs and bits falling on my painting. I'm going to just pop in some mask, and to do this we're going to add the real highlights in our picture. Now, where do we think they are? Looking at his little face, obviously it's the whiskers and things. Excuse me, I'm making a noise here in the background. Obviously it's whiskers, but for the time being I want to look at that face, and I'm considering, here we go, let's take this out. I'm considering the areas that I'm seeing here and up here around the eyes. There are some very, very light, bright hairs here. Let me bring you in so that you can see where I'm whittering about. There are some bright, bright areas here, aren't there? And we've got fine, fine hairs across our kitty cat's ears. I think what we'll do to start with, we're just going to mask out this eye. We're going to mask out the white here to make sure that's there. Ignore the things that don't matter. Looking in here, he has got this strange blob on his eye. Don't know what that is. Here, I'm going to ignore it. I don't want it. But what I do want, and that you'll see, is that highlight there. I really, really want to capture that. And there's a twinkle there, and there's a twinkle here. So we need to make sure we keep those. But for now, all I'm going to do is get rid of that eye, and then we're going to do the whole thing first off with this beigey coloured paint. So into here. We all know the rule, do we, about masking fluid? Bit of soap, and here we have a brush. Pop it in, and you're going to just make sure that every bit of that brush is covered. And then roll it to get rid of any excess bubbles, because the bubbles will make a difference to how this mask goes on. I've given it a good shake because you need to move the dye around, and I just want to come in and carefully mask out my kitty cat's eye. So these bubbles, get rid of them, because they really will make a difference to how the paint goes on. Sometimes the paint will go through those bubbles and then you land up with blobs of colour in an area that you want to keep clean. So I'm coming round, making sure that's all done. There you go, Pussycat's done. And you see here there's even a hair. It's mixed media, that's cat fur from my moggies. And then give your brush a really good clean on your cloth. Job done. That's sorted. And that's all I'm going to do at the moment for our little moggy. We need to let that dry. And I want to make sure that I am all ready with the paint and the brush. For the background here, I'm going to use this lovely brush. This is, again, it's a Rosemary's brush, and it's a goat hair hake. And goat's hair is lovely because it's got a spring in it. It isn't solid. It doesn't. Some goats' hakes, when you put them on the paper and you paint, you lift it off and they're still bent, and that is absolutely hopeless, because then you've got to come back the other way. You have no choice, or you've got to physically flatten the brush again in the palette, and I think that that's just hopeless. Therefore, I like to use my Rosemary's brush because it has a spring, and that means that every time I come across the paper, the brush bounces back. Now, mine's getting a little elderly because it's starting to molt. So I really, really ought to treat myself to a new one, didn't I? Colour, ready. Mask, ready. We are drawn out. We're going to put a bit of a colour on that whole thing. This is the underpainting. The first thing I want to do is come in here and wet it. If you use water in the first instance, so I'm just coming through, I've put my cat on a piece of paper that's larger than I want, than I need and I require, but that doesn't matter. You can always trim a picture. But if you don't have large enough paper to start with, and you get to those edges with the whiskers or with wings or whatever you're painting, you can't make the paper bigger. So don't make that mistake. Always start larger and cut into it when you frame it. I've wet that, and then if I sort of look sideways at my picture, I can see where I've been. If it's looking matte rather than shiny, I know that I don't have water on that area. Now, we've done this purely and simply to give ourselves breathing time. This gives you panic time. Having wet that area, all of it, the paper is going to absorb that, and it makes the paint sit on the top just a little bit longer. Gives you time to manoeuvre it and to manipulate it. So a brush full of paint, and I'm going to come in and I just want to run it everywhere. Just going to bring it across, put it everywhere. There we are. All over. And we're basically starting with the lightest colour our cat is going to be. That's where we are with this. That colour is now going to be the whiskers, the highlights, all those light areas on our pussycat. Rinse the brush, and now I've got to come in there and I have to blow dry it. Right everyone, here comes the fiddly bit now. We're going to look at the real highlights in our picture, where we want to have the light areas. And as I was saying earlier on, we're looking at all these little hairs here. I want to be thinking as well about this round here, because I think the next thing we'll do, oh, come on Pusscat, play the game, is come in here and paint this background. So now we're thinking about the edges, and edges mean all the things that come out here and all the little whiskers, this, anything that comes out into the background. We need to go around our pussycat. Let me come out a little bit so that you can see what I'm going to do. I want to use, this is a zero rigger brush. Lovely fine brush. Here we go, look. Lovely fine brush. Now for a rigger brush, I really do like to use a synthetic brush because it has more spring, again, than a sable. So this is synthetic. And I'm going to use just a gash brush to use for my mask. Again, we're going to wet it and we're going to soap it. This brush is actually a Da Vinci. So they're nice brushes. And we're going to get rid of the bubbles. Make sure the whole brush has got soap on it. And I want to come in here and I'm going to come around my edges. Now I don't want nice flat edges. I'm going to come in and I'm going to wiggle them. You will notice that my pussycat, I have just done half his face. I quite like the mystery of this half face idea, and I've used it a lot in my artwork. It also means that if we're not sure about it, and some of it is quite tedious when you get round to doing all the little hairs, so it means that if you've just got half a face to paint, it's not quite the boring job that it could be. Coming back, getting rid of those bubbles. Give yourself a generous edging. So just coming down there for starters. Pick up more and then come in and wibble the edges. There's a good word. Look, get all the technical terms with me. I'm going to wibble those edges. Don't want them to be straight. So come down, give yourself a good barrier, and then come back in and fluff the edges. Little pussycat's got lots and lots of hair and it's fluffy, all right, so we don't want to get too complicated with that. This area here, this is going to be quite muted and quite soft, which will push it back. So we're going to come in for now, and later on I'll show you how to make that softer. But for now, let's just give ourselves an edge. Everybody needs an edge. That's all we really need to do at the moment. One thing that we could do, to be honest with you, to save ourselves time later, come in there and just do his little nose, because we want to keep that nice and pink for later. Okay, so we'll just do that a little bit. Now, all these little hairs, this is where you get to the fiddly bit, because now we want to use our rigger brush. And I'm going to come back in here and I want to look after this. So right up there into the ferrule, make sure you've got soap, because this is a super brush and you need to keep it safe. And now I'm going to think very hard about where I'm going with this and what I'm going to do with it. I'm looking at the picture carefully, and I'm seeing that up here, I'm going to just bring it in a little bit so that you can see where I am with it. Bit more. There we are. And here up on his head, I'm just going to, everybody use the tip of the brush. Don't come in there and lay it on sideways. Hold it at 90 degrees and use just the tip, and it will give you these exquisite little hairs, teeny tiny little hairs. You can barely see them on the video, but little tiny teeny, gentle touch, everybody, please, gentle touch. With this here, we need to be thinking about these hairs. And for this, you need to get a really good sweep going. So just imagine, don't worry about all this in the ear at the moment, but we're thinking about these hairs outside of the ear, so that we've maybe got some here. Lightly, as though you were stroking a little baby bird. All right? And then this here, they come to a kind of triangle point. So through, pull it, And I'm not even putting my hand on paper. You can do if you feel that's easier. But please, you've got to do that in one sweep. Don't go slowly. Pull it fast. Keep your brush loaded. And every time you load your brush in and then get rid of it, see that drop? Get rid of it. Get rid of it. And then pull. And the harder you press, the thicker the line will be. So try very hard. Let me see if I can come in even closer so that you can see. And every time I do that, I haven't learnt yet what I'm talking about, have I? I've got to do it fine. Fine, like that. Okay, so we've got some hair there. And now I want to come down and I'm going to do those whiskers. And the side of his face. So again, this through here, gently, gently, little fine, fine, fine lines. Little lines. There in front of his ears there too. Be patient. Turn the music on. And just gently, gently. And they go in all different directions. All different directions. And remember that when you paint the rest of the face, these hairs will go back to this pale, pale, lovely, lovely creamy colour. These are going to be our highlights. So all different directions down here. That's it. And then we're going to continue that through down here. I don't want to blur this quite as much as it's blurred on the painting, on the photograph. Now if you want good photographs, everybody, there's a super app that you can go to and it's called Pixabay. Pixabay. I'll put all these down on notes next to the video so that you've got it. And they're royalty-free pictures that you can use. And when I put in cats, it brought me up to 17,000 cats. So that'll keep you all busy. Now I've got to do these lovely long whiskers here, and he's got whiskers as well if we look hard on his chin. Can we see these on his little chin? So I've got to think about those pretty hard, and the easiest way for me to do that is to get a brush full of mask, and I need to do these out and down. And I can't turn this because it will be a nuisance for you. I'm going to turn myself, so I'm going to actually stand up. And I'm going to come in down here and I'm going to bring you a little bit closer so that you can see what I want to do. And from here I want to lift, now 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of whiskers here. Cat's whiskers grow, try to get this through here so you can see. Cat's whiskers grow in lines, believe it or not. Bizarre as that seems. So therefore I need to really think hard about where I'm going to put this. So I'm going to come in here with this, and from here, sweep it, everybody, sweep. Reload each time so that you don't get dry brushwork. Come through from that line, sweep it. Light, light, gentle strokes. And we need lots, because it's these that make your cat look beautiful. Just the tip of the brush. The tip, tip, tip. Some of them come up. Pull them right out, because the longer the whisker, the more exciting it looks. I'm dripping here, but it doesn't matter because we'll be removing that before we're painting anything else, so that's fine. Alright, so that should do us. Have we got them long enough, do you think, everybody? There we are. Right, what I might like to do, I think, and I don't have on the photograph, but I might like to do is just 1 or 2 up here from this area where their little eyebrows are, up, out into the sky, because they will show up later and they will look interesting. Okay, that's fine. We're going to clean our brush. Get rid of that. And I'm thinking to myself, these spots that I've made with the flick, does it matter? If you don't want them, just come in. And this is the SAA's Mask Away. My goodness, they're brilliant. I'm just going to come back a bit so that you can see what it is. Here it is. This is the Mask Away, and it's really rather fantastic. You can come in here and just lift out any drips that you don't want. I'm not worried about that one. That's fine. Okay. Right. So, next thing we need to be thinking about is our background colour, and I want to keep it all really, really muted and neutral. Let's do something along the same lines as our cat, those goldy yellowy browns. Bearing in mind that if we've got light whiskers, the only way light whiskers are going to show up is if we're thinking about a darker colour behind. There's no other way to think about this and deal with it. This light against light, hopeless. You need contrast all of the time. So therefore, I'm thinking about using, I'm going to mix it into this. This is my burnt umber. And what happens if I take a little bit of Payne's Grey to mute it? And then just to brighten it up, perhaps, I'm going back into my raw sienna. And that gives me a sludgy sort of interesting brown for my background, doesn't it? And hopefully that should be enough to make these whiskers stand out. I don't know, I'm going to have a little bit more of that. That's the Payne's Grey. Okay. Where we go with this, I'd like to introduce at this point some salt. So I'm going to have that ready and waiting in the wings. And honestly, everybody, less is more. There's barely any salt there, look. Barely any there. And again, I'm going to wet this because I don't want to suddenly get halfway across the page and it all dries and I'll end up with lines and marks in it. That would be hopeless. Don't want to do that. This time I'm going to use my larger hake brush. So again, this is a goat's hair. It's a rosemary again. And I'm wetting the background. I'm going to come round my puss cat. And because I've got this lovely wide barrier, I don't have to stress over touching anything and making a mess. And putting the paint into my pussycat. So I've wet the background and it's shiny, everyone. So you want shiny, shiny's good. And then I'm going to come in here and introduce my background, my dark colour. These colours might, I think they're going to as well, granulate for me. Can you see this granulation going on around here? So that makes it quite exciting. And because we've got a nice big piece of paper, we can afford to just stutter to a stop here and it's not the end of the world. More cat hair, lovely. Sorry about this, everybody, but it shows it's authentic. And here's the Payne's Grey. I'm going to come in with a little bit of that. And I want to drop it in just here and there, just to make it interesting. I'm not concerned at all about light or dark coming in from anywhere. I just want to imagine that my light might be face on to my cat. If you want to, we can flick a bit to make the background more interesting. So you can do this. I'm not going to stress over much about the cat fur that's in there. Right, so we've got a bit of granulation going on there, which is exciting. I notice I've managed to splish and splash and splosh the raw sienna, so all right, let's help that along a bit too then maybe. It's all right. And if there are bits of this background that you don't like, you can always just remove them, because we've got all that space, you can just cut it up. Salt wise, oh, I don't want a lot. So I'm just going to do this, so I'm literally picking it off my finger. If you put too much salt on, you'll find that it'll take too much colour away, and then you land up with too much contrast, and I don't like that either. So I just want a bit of a texture in there, but nothing too excitable. And now, once again, we need to leave that, and this time it has to dry naturally, because if we hurry it along with a hairdryer, it stops the action. But if you decide that it reaches the stage as you watch it that you like it and you don't want it to work anymore, get the hairdryer out and stop it. I'll be back in a minute when that's done. Here we go, the salt's done its work. I've brushed it off, I've removed all of the masking fluid, and now I'm going to go into this picture, and I've been adding some more bits and pieces of masking fluid where I see the lighter areas on my pussycat. I'm looking at the next layout, so this kind of the palest colour that we're seeing on the cat now, above the eyebrows, this here, this area here. I've put some fur in here along the ear. So again, fill with mask, get rid of the extra using the tip of the brush, come in and just gently feather it through. I have little hairs all the way up this ear here. So we're just going to pull these through, little ones along the outer edge. Not ideal really to put masking fluid all over your iPad, but there you go, never mind. And then I want to come in with longer strokes, these long hairs. I've got hairs here, so I'm going to try to pull it through to this area here. There's quite a clump through here, so pull it through. This is hair that you will not have to paint. It's going to just sit here, these beautiful light hairs, and they're going to stay here, the colour of this underpainting that we've already done. So tip of that brush, tip, tip, tip. Keep the brush full, because if we don't, we're going to land up with a lot of dry brush work. So it's a bit here and a bit there, and then it's not there, and then it's a bit blank. I don't want that. These are beautiful little hairs, and they all have a right to be seen. Make sure that they all attach to the side of the ear. Hair doesn't grow from the middle of the ear. We want to get that right too. I'm going to put a few shorter ones here. Pull it through. Lots of this coming through to this triangular shape here. There we are. Now, of course, afterwards, there is no reason at all why you can't go into this and add this with a lighter paint at the end of your picture. And we will indeed be doing some of that as well. Why ever not? We can do that. That's all right. I want to come down and look at the rest of the picture and see where I might need to be. Now, I can see on this little pussycat's mouth here, over the pink of his mouth, I've got teeny, teeny, tiny little hairs, and they are going in right now. Teeny little tiny hairs. Because again, if you put them in now, you won't have to paint them. This is it. So keep that brush, don't let it fill too much, so that when you come through here, they're little teeny tiny marks. Thin, thin little marks. We've also got here some whiskers out from his chin, so let's do that. They have little hairs on their chinny chins, do cats. So we're going to do a few of those. Barely touch the paper, barely touch it. I want to now be thinking about whiskers out through here. So here's this trajectory up through, try and catch it. There's one, up through, try and get it, and through there. So just a few here so that these areas can stay light. I'm just picking up on the whiskers that I've got. These, can I catch it? Yes, just. And yes, just. Need a steady hand. Okay, so we've done that. I've got these little hairs here by his nose. These down here, a blank area here. And I've just flipped some teeny little highlights through here, through this area here. Just a few little hairs. That's all right. Now the other thing that I want to do here is come in, and with his eye I want to just lay across this curve here. I want that white. Absolutely, I want to keep that white, because then it gives me choices later to paint it separately later on. And I can also see in his eye, along here, you have this teeny tiny rim of light, and I want to drop that in, so that's just here. So thin dot, and a little bit up through there, but that keeps it beautifully light. I can also see, if I look very carefully, just here, there's a teeny tiny little dot there, and a teeny tiny little dot here. And yes, put them in now, why not? If you can see them, do it. That's absolutely super fine. And I'm looking at that, and at the moment I can't really see anything else that I need to stress about. Not immediately. Okay, we're going to start the next layer then. Clean the brush, give it a good wipe on my cloth. And I'm going to take you out now so that you can see what I'm going to do with the paint. And now I'm moving on to my number 8 Kolinsky sable brush here, my Rosemary's brush. And with this we're looking for the next colour on our cat. We're looking for the next colour down, this buffy brown here really. I'm also on my palette, I've introduced a little bit of burnt sienna because I can see it here and on the top of his head. And maybe even here across his nose. I think it's a he, I don't know why I feel that, but I do. Okie dokie, let's see what we can do with this. It's going to be easier for us if we wet the areas that we're going to be dealing with. It means that, again, as I said earlier, it gives us a little bit of time, panic time. I want to come in here and just think about this here. And the important thing to remember is you can paint on top of this pale colour as long as it is bone dry. Don't go into any paint when it's wet. Don't do it, just don't do it. Now, the colour that we were using here for our background, I'm going to add a little bit more of Payne's Grey, and I'm going to just drop that into here. Put it in, clean your brush, get rid of the drip, and then come in and soften. Clean it, get rid of the drip. That's a bit paler there, so I'm just going to lift some out. I want to drop in, I'm just looking at the colours I've got. Thin, I want that thinner, that colour, paler. So I'm now coming in up through here. So that's the same colour, but just more water. I want to take a little bit, if I move this over a bit, will you see it? Yes. I want to drop just a tiny bit of the, this is the burnt sienna, up into here. And you can always layer more on, don't worry about that. We're just, at the moment, we're just interested in adding a few colours. Here we've got the burnt sienna, this is raw sienna, burnt sienna, and those two colours together with quite a bit of water should do that golden brown on the tip of his nose. Rinse your brush, get rid of the extra drip and just blend it. I want to come through this area here where the eyes are and just here in the hollow of the eye put that in there. Just going to put that in there for now. And bear in mind, watercolour is a bit of a stinker because it fades right out. So as dark as it looks, when it dries, it will look lighter. Coming through and wetting this area here. And just gently, gently, this area I'm going to lay in this browny colour through here. So underneath that light, up around the eye, out through here, and to there, and a little bit down here. You're just gently, gently laying colour in. It's all going to fade a lot, and we'll need to do it again in a minute, but for now, let's just get some markers so that we know where things are. I'm here looking at that. And then I want to give myself the idea of where this would be. That goes up through there, doesn't it? And it's all still quite wet, so it means that I shouldn't land up with any backgrounds, I shouldn't have any cauliflowers. I'm coming down through there, I don't like that blob, so clean the brush, dab it, and then I'm coming back through to just lift, clean it, dab it, and then come back through that side to do that. I've gone into his eye, naughty, there you go. Move that. So clean brush, get rid of the water, thirsty brush comes in and just lifts it out. Okay. Now that's all drying, please leave it alone. Leave it alone. I want to come in here and wet that because now I want the shadow that's in under his little chinny chin chin. So there's his pink lips and I'm just going to lay a bit of shadow in there. That's all I'm going to do for just for a minute. So rinse and dab and come back and just do that. I've splashed my work. Be careful of the old water. The key to this is where it's still wet and shiny, you can go in and you can play with it. Where it's starting to dry and it's only damp, but if I put my finger on it, I'd leave a mark, leave it alone, because that is where you're going to land up with cauliflowers. So let's leave it alone and let it dry. I want to come up here now and look at his ear. So again, I'm going to just wet inside the ear. And here we've got this colour. Let's bring it down here. But into that, I have also just got a little touch of alizarin crimson. Let's see what happens. And that gives us that interesting sort of pinky brown. And that's the colour that I'd like to initially drop into his ear. Let's see. A bit more of the alizarin, I think. So put it in. I'm going to put it up there because I shall write in a minute what I've done so that I know that that's the colour I've got. So I drop that in. It's a bit lighter up there, so clean your brush, rinse and dab, and now thirsty brush again, and I want to come in, lift some out. Rinse and dab, and then a thirsty brush will lift some out. And while it's still wet, we go into this mishmash for colour, and I want to drop dark into there, and then I'm just going to bring it up along that edge, and bring it round his ear and down into the shadows there. Okay, so rinse and dab and then pick up. That's excess. That could cause a cauliflower and I don't want that, so I'm quite anxious for that not to happen. Whilst we're waiting for all of that to dry, what we'll do now is just come down here and look at his eye. Interesting colours in here. What are we going to do with that, we ask? Well, I want to just wet it, and I'm not going shiny wet with this. I just want there to be enough water there so that the eye is damp, wet. Let the paper absorb it, let it go. Just let it go, because I don't want it to be shining. There's a puddle there, let's get rid of that. And into that, I now want to drop this. This is the raw sienna. I'm going to use that very, very thinly because underneath all of that I still see that golden colour in the eye. I can see that golden colour. That drip, get rid of the wet on your brush, but my brush is still dirty, it still has that colour on it. So when I wick that drip out, it doesn't pull a white streak out of the picture. I'm going to clean that, and then I've found myself some cerulean blue, and the cerulean blue I'm going to drop some burnt umber into that, and it makes this very strange grey blue. And this is the colour that I want to come in here whilst it's damp, so it would be soft, soft edges. And I'm going to bring this blue into the eye like this. That's very dark round there. I want to just see some bits of the yellow. Now we'll leave that and we'll let that dry, because I don't want to go back into that when it's wet. It will obviously make a mess, so don't do it, don't do it. So tempting, but don't do it. The colour that we have up here in the ear, this sort of pinky browny colour, I'm just going to drop that into his nose as well. So that's coming across here, and I'm going to do the whole lot. Let that dry. And I also want that down here into the lips. Not necessarily so much that bottom lip, because that's a bit pinker, isn't it? So if we just use alizarin crimson for that, let's see what would happen with that. Thin, thin colour, look, almost not there, but there you go. I just want that to be that pink. So again, drip there, so all I've done is just empty the brush, wicked it, and then come back in and clean up. Okie dokie. Next stage for that then is dry it. Now as long as this is absolutely bone dry and flat, I can go back into it and I can work again. I want to come back, and now you can see how the colours have faded, and if I come back into here now and I drop more water in there, I can go back to my lovely burnt umber raw sienna mix, and I just want to drop a bit more of that into there. And if you want to tidy up the edges, rinse, dab, and then come back and come into the edge and just nudge it. Okay, down the nose I'd like a little bit more, maybe we need to do some more down here, so wet it. And with that I want my raw sienna, my burnt sienna mix, and I'm going to just introduce a bit more colour there, tighten that up, smarten it up, come back in to blend. And then I want to introduce this brown on the nose, so there's a little area of light here, and then coming up through the nose here we have this dark, so we do that. Rinse, dab, come back and soften, and then come into this side, and so you have to come into it from the side that you're going to blend. I'm going to come in there and soften it like that. And now I want to add a little bit more darkness through here, so again I'm going to just dampen, come in here, and I want to do that again. So I'm layering it on top of the colour that I had, but I'm making it a little bit darker. These fluffy edges, rinse, dab, and come back into it to nudge it and budge it and smooth it away. And then I can come back with a darker mix, Payne's Grey, burnt umber, mix them together, and then I can come back in here and I can just introduce that and some of that. These nasty fluffy edges, rinse and dab, come back, and because it's all still wet, rinse and dab and come back. And don't keep pulling it out, come back into it and push it back in. So there you go. So that's smudged those, nudged those. There's also a little bit of dark here, isn't there? Again, I don't like that blossoming, so rinse and dab and come back and just push it. I want a bit more darkness around here, so wet it. And then we come back into the colour and we put some more colour into there. I want more interest here. So again, going back into the dark colour, burnt umber, Payne's grey, a bit more Payne's grey, not too much paint, and I want to just say, have a bit more there. Okay, that's a bit hard, so again, come into the edges of it and soften, that's okay. Up through here, I want to introduce some colour through the nose now. I won't do that dry, I'm going to come in, wet it. There's my brown, bit more black this time. And how I want to just do this up to there. And again, smarten it up, so rinse and dab, and then come in. Rinse it, dab it, and again, come back in. You be in control of this. That one, don't like it, push it back. Hard line, clean brush, push it back. This doesn't matter because our picture's going to end about here, so that's okay. Not concerned about that. I'd like to introduce this dark through here. So this is damp, that area, come through, get hold of the dark colour. So Payne's grey, bit of burnt umber. If you used one or the other on their own, they'd be a bit too heavy and too hard. So put them both together and it makes you quite a nice dark. And I want to say here, up through here. Need more colour. Don't forget, because of the water on the paper, of course it really does bleach the colour out. And as that comes up and through and over his head, I think that becomes here more burnt umber. So get hold of your water brush, clean it, get rid of all those drips, and we can do that. There's this lovely little bit of fluffy colour here, so that's still damp, so I'm going to come in there and introduce that down to the eyebrow. And again, you can come in and just nudge and budge and smudge it that way. There we are. Whilst that's having a bit of a drop, oh no, I want some more dark there as well. You can do this as much as you want to, as long as you stay away from the areas that are wet. If I go back into that now, it will absolutely cauliflower and make a mess. So just make sure that you stay away from the areas that are drying. Okay, what we want to do as well down here is just give the impression that his chin is above his neck, and that means that we're just going to come into here and introduce some dark shadows under here. Keep your edges white so that you retain all of this nice contrast. There we are. Pick it up, get rid of the drips. Good. With his ear, I want to go back in here, so I'm wetting that again. And I want a browny black mix for that ear. And I want to come back in and drop in a real dark there. Pull it back. Okay. It's also really quite dark, isn't it, around this edge, so let's do that down there as well. And I'm going to soften that by rinsing and dabbing and coming back. I might like to keep that a little bit clearer than that, so let's just soften that. I think I'd like a little more red in there, but at the moment this is wet enough because it's still shining, so I can pick up some alizarin and I can go in there and I can just introduce a little more of that, as long as it's still shiny wet. And I also see that there's a bit of pink down there. That's better. I also think this needs to be darker, and because that's shiny wet, I can go in there and I can do that. And I'm going to nudge and budge it around the edges. Come in, push it back. Right, okay. Next thing we need to do there, dry it again. So layer number 3. I think that we need to put a little bit of, this is the raw sienna around the ear. I'm going to come up around here and just drop in some raw sienna. Remember, watercolour will dry up to a third lighter, so therefore don't be too afraid. But having said that, it's always easier to add more colour than it is to take it away. So just be on the safe side. So I've done that, so I have a little bit of colour there now. I'm also going to use that colour, that's the raw sienna, to just come in and tip that into that top of his head there. Get rid of the watermarks by coming in with a damp brush, clean damp brush, and just blending it away. I'd like a little bit more colour down here, sort this area out here. So I want to wet it, and this first browny colour here, I'm just going to come down here and drop some more of that in there. Rinse and dab and come in around the edges like that. There we are. And I want to introduce some more colour to that eye now. I'm going to wet it. And I'm going back to my cerulean blue and my burnt umber. And I want to drop that shadow in around there. Again, rinse and dab and come back and push it back. There we are. So already we're seeing the orb shape appearing on the eye now. So that helps us, doesn't it? That helps. Where do we need to go now? We need a bit more dark down here. So we're going back to burnt umber, Payne's grey. And I want to come in here and pull that down there, and I'd like some more through here. Again, damp brush, come around the edges. Don't go into it and pull it, so go into it like you're introducing yourself. Hello paint, my name's Brush, I'm going to stroke you. Sounds balmy, doesn't it? I want some darkness in the corners of his mouth, so where this and this meet his muzzle here, I want that a bit darker. And again, come in and just wipe it away like that. Where his nose is here, we've got some darkness on either side of his nose. So I'd like to just introduce Payne's grey and burnt umber again. And this time I'm going to just pull some darkness up there and some through here, just at the moment for balance, for me to understand what I'm looking at. Like that. Good, good, good. And then we can start thinking about some of the real darks. So here, for instance, we've got these dark, dark patternings on his fur. What we can do with that is, again, wet it. Wet it. Payne's grey, burnt umber. Now you see that's a bit, oh I don't know, that's not bad, is it? What we're going to do is come in there and from here let it blossom, because you can always come back and you can pull that blossoming away, so that's all right. We know what to do with that, we can do that. I'm going to pull that up there. And then we've got some bits and pieces coming through here. All right, we've got some darkness here. So this is the light area up through now. So we rinse and we dab the drips off and we come into the side of it. Rinse and dab. Don't like that, let's get rid of that. Don't like that blossoming, so just come in and control it. You're the boss. You're the boss. And it's all down to how wet and how dry this is. How wet and how dry. So again, into there, whilst I've got this dark colour, and that's about the 4th layer into there. But it works, look at that. All of a sudden we've got a bit of depth. I want to come in here, back to there, and I'm going to really drop the Payne's Grey and the Burnt Umber into there. I just want to come in there with that real dark. Okay. We want to drop in this lovely stripe on his eye, so let's do that next. Go for the dark. And in through here. And we're going to just soften that blossoming again with a damp brush. Come in, damp brush, and then come up, because if I pull that, then I get rid of that nasty blobby end. And I want to just be dropping in. So this is my light out here. I just want to drop in some darkness there. That's a little bit wide, isn't it? So if we come back, clean brush, rinse, dab. Keep your brush clean. It's like hygiene in hospitals. So if you keep your brush clean, you can cope with it, you can do it. I want that to be even darker still. So Payne's Grey, Burnt Umber. And I'm going to just come in there, that bit, and that bit of shadow in there. Okay. And I also would like to have some more darkness here. So again, I'm going to come in, I'm going to just drop that. Like that. And that's hard because it went onto dry paper, so come in round the edges with your damp brush. See, you're always going into it from the clean edge. Don't go into the paint and into the dirt and try and drag it around. Go in, introduce yourself from the clean edge, and you'll find that you'll get a much better look. I still want that to be darker. All the time you're just adjusting, adjusting, adjusting. Dropping in another bit, dropping in another bit. Is my eye dry? It's fairly dry. What I want to do here now is come in round my eye, and I'm going to take my strange browny red mix. So that's the alizarin, and that is Burnt Umber with a teeny bit of Payne's Grey, and that's the colour that I want to use around the rim of the eye. Again, not too much, so empty your brush. Can you see that? Empty your brush, and I want to run this now around here. And that is the most perfect edge that you can possibly achieve, please, because it's an eyeball and it's rounded, so we want to get those little areas of light in that we've put in there. Really want that. Up through here we can see a little bit of that colour too, and that kind of comes out there into this hair. We've also got just a little bit, there we are, so we'll leave that. I also know that I want this to be a bit darker around here. I'm taking my cerulean blue And this time I'm going to add some Payne's Grey to that. So a little bit of Payne's Grey. So it's quite dark, a bit more. There we are. And this time onto dry paint. This is a different technique for blending. Put your dark on. Oh, look at that. Put your dark on. And there's also dark down either side of the iris. No, that's the pupil, Sharon. You're doing the iris, Sharon. And again, go in. And this is blending onto dry paper. There you go. So that gives us that. Leave that because I don't want to fiddle with that anymore because I'm frightened that I might mess that up. So at the moment, leave it be and we'll go back to it. Using this reddy brown, I want to come in and I want to make the bottom of his nose here darker. So I'm going to do that, and this time I come in from above to blend that like that. And I need to have this dark colour down here underneath here. And because that's so dark, that will make all these little hairs show up. That side and that side. And then we're going to pull that across and through gently. So that it's still light in the middle, but we have the darkness either side. So that's really good. Pleased with that. The ear's okay. We could perhaps, I think, do with a little bit more dark down here. Is it dry enough to do that? Yes. So come back. So here we go. This is the burnt. Oh, I've put that in the wrong one. Never mind. Not the end of the world. So I'd like to just make that a little bit darker. Down there. Rinse, dab, and this time we come in from this side to blend. Okay. It's all these little bits of drama, you know, that make it all work. So these are the important things that we need to do. And this darkness means also that I need that kind of depth there. One balances the other. All right. You see this funny little flash of darkness out either side of his nostrils. I think what we'll do is we'll dry it and take the white off, and now we'll make some sense out of that. Here we go again. I've taken the masking fluid off, but I confess, I have painted in masking fluid these little lighter edges to his muzzle, and I have remasked the whiskers just on the face because I want to keep that lovely light area there. I think that's quite important. We need to soften up some of this now because it's really quite harsh, and we are now going to scrub a little bit with a brush like this. You need a short, stubby, quite hard brush, and this is Rosemary's Sable Pointer, and it's a wicked way to treat a brush, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want it to be just damp, and I'm coming in here and I'm going to scumble the paint that I've got to soften up these white hairs. Okay, so just gently, and then stroke it through so that you've still got the light there, but it's not screaming at you. And here the same, we might have to introduce a little bit of dark into that area just to make it make sense. So just pull a little bit of dark for a bit of shading. And let's just blunt this. Just blunt it. And if we look at, and there's a water line there, get rid of it by pulling the water out. And if you look along the bottom of the eye where the pink is, there is actually brown there. So I'm going to wet that and then gently come in and drop that colour along there. And I'm going to soften that way. That's fine. These here, I'm quite happy with those. Just gently scumble them a little bit so that they're not too harsh. And around the nose here. There we are. Okay. Let's start refining some of it now. Oh no, I want to just, sorry, soften that a bit. That's it. And again, we've got that darkness around there too. So I'm coming through there. I'm going to pick this up. I want to just introduce a little. It's the shadow where the eye is in the face. I want to round that up a bit too. So just come in with the damp brush, pull it. That's it. Okie doke. Now we need to refine some of this because this bottom of this nose is really quite dark here. We'll take this colour. Let's see if we can do it with that. We might need to put a little bit of dark in there. A bit more. Oh, I don't know. No, that's okay. Pop it in, dab, and just come in and soften. Okay. I'd like to make some of this dark around here. So again, I'm going into this skin colour and I want to pull that back through there. And I'd like some of that round the edge of that eye, round there, round here. And here you've definitely got two areas here. You've got that tiny little sill there. So I'm going to just pick up a bit of dark and reinforce that through there. I want to do that. And I'd like a little bit of dark in there, like that. Now around this eye we've got to be brave with this because we need to go even darker still, and that takes courage. Let's take our dark that we used before, and now we need yet more Payne's Grey, because the rounder and the darker and yet the lighter we can make some of this, the more stunning the contrast. Round this inner edge of the eye is quite dark. You see, I don't think that's dark enough. I'm going to go into where I've messed up my Payne's Grey. I'm going to go in and use messy Payne's Grey. Round through here. Sharp, sharp edge, please. That's it. And this has to be very dark to make this stand out. Now I'm not going to waste that paint. So here's the number 8 brush. And I'm going to use the number 8 to blend. Job done, bosh. This I want to come back in, and all around here I just want to drop in this darker line of colour around the bottom. Number 8 brush, so not soaking, not rinsed like I had before, that's just damp. And then I can come in here and introduce just this. Oh, I love it. The eyes are the window to the soul, aren't they? And I really, really think that they just scream it out. Neat, neat Payne's Grey. Neat Payne's Grey. And drop some of that into some of this. In there. I'd like some of that round there, because this is damp now rather than soaking wet. Round there. Round this edge. This rim of the eye. There we go. That's black in there. There we are. Wow, that's looking quite cool, isn't it? All right. What I'd like to do, damp brush. Please don't go in there with lots of water because it would really, really make a mess at the moment. And I'm going back to this blue. Thin, thin, thin colour. Thin, thin colour. No, it's too dark. Too thick. There. Just want to texture that eye a little bit. Into the dark and into these wet areas, just come in and Drop in. A few little striations in the eye. Going to come in a minute and do something with that pupil, so just watch this space, leave it be, let it go, wait for it to dry. I'd like something dark around here. We're going back to that, so we're going back to our dark colour, and this time it's dry, and this time I'm coming in using this lovely fine point on this brush. I want to come around there and do some of that, pull this out. This cat's got the most unusual eyes actually, because they're big wide open eyes, most unusual. And I want some of that to be Payne's Grey too. So here we go, just coming in with the Payne's Grey now and dropping it in so that it can blossom and bleed into that. So that's good news, happy with that. Righto. Now this little nose is really very dark around here. And again, I want to come in with my dark mix. I want more than that. I want that to be even darker. And I'm going to simply just nudge it and budge it all the way around there. This is that well-known firm of solicitors called Nudge It and Budge It. And we're going to come in this side and do that. Clean brush and a dab, and we're going to come into that side and do that. And the reason why we always do this dabbing nonsense is because if I don't do that, there's always water on the ferrule, and that is the water that lands up on your painting, making a wretched, wretched mess. So using the dark colour now, I want to come in and I'm going to run that up our kitty's nose, like that, and again come in from this side and just nudge it. Right, I'd like a little bit more colour both here and out round the nose here. That'll do for now. And then we're going to think about, see this, I still want that to be darker actually, I don't like that. So again, bit of damp, come in. This is glazing, this is laying one colour on top of another, and you can do that as long as the colours are transparent and therefore they shine through each other. Transparent colours, this is why the Shinhan colours are so brilliant from Jackson's, because they're all transparent and it means that we can see through them and we can paint on top, on top, on top, and there's no issue with it at all. Right, where I want to go with this now, I would like to introduce some of these little tiny shadings here along the muzzle where the whiskers lay in these lines. This needs blending in, so come in with a damp brush and just smudge it, blend it in. If you're gentle and your brush is clean, you'll be fine. And then along these lines, what we want to do here is take our dark and we're going to put that along like that, and then with a damp brush we're going to come in and you're just going to smudge that. If you notice as well, this is really quite dark around the nose here. This is where you'd have the nostril, but you've got quite a bit of darkness around here too. And this, to make sure it's soft and nice, I want to just wet it before I come in and introduce that shadow. And I want that to be quite dark in there. And again, clean damp brush and just smudge it and nudge it, that's fine. Okay, leave all that. This is a bit wide, isn't it, actually? That should have been narrow, but never mind, our cat's got a wide nose. Do we care? No, we're all right with that, aren't we? This needs to be dark in here, so I'm just going to come in there. Payne's Grey, and drop that in. We can't do this until it's dry. This is rubbish because it's wonky and it looks ridiculous, so we need to get rid of that. So we're going to do that by coming into Payne's Grey, and I want to pull that round that curve of the eye. Oh, and all of a sudden you can see those two little white blobs that I put in with mask. And that's why it looked dodgy, because that's the little white blip that I put in. And when we look at the picture, that eye has a dark shadow in there. Okay, so again, I'm just going to soften that. Don't want that hard like that. Shall we put the pupil in, because that's going to make one heck of a difference. So using, this is a number 1 brush, and I want to use just Payne's Grey. And this time I'm going to come down and put the slit in the eye. Whack and bosh, like that. But I'm not leaving it like that. I want to come back with my damp number 4, and I'm going to poke into it like that. Just to soften it up. I think that needs to be darker under there, otherwise that shadow of that reflection won't show. We need that there so that it stands out and it shines. This also, I think, still needs to be darker. So this is what I'm talking about with the layering. Come in, we've got the dark brush now, the thin brush. And I'm going to put that all the way around there to make that stand out. Do we need more here? Just a thin slither around there, okay? And again, I'm just going to soften the inside edge of the eye. That's it. Right, happy now. With regards to the rest of the fur and texturising it, we need to think about that in a minute. But before we do, let's just add a little bit of darkness to this little nose. Here. Like that. Just going to blend that away. And then we're going to come in with this lovely little brush, and I want my Payne's Grey with a little bit of the burnt umber, because quite darkly I want to come in and put this lovely curve of a nostril in here. Like that. We know we don't need to bother with the other side because that's not going to feature in our painting. And I'm just going to, with a damp brush, come in and do that again, just to budge it away. So we've got a very definite sort of nostril going on now. That's good, that's what we want. I'd like to just define that a teeny bit more. Helps if you've got paint on the brush, everybody. Right, that's good. And now we're going to do a little bit of texturising on our fur. This is a bad way to treat a good brush, I'm not kidding you. This is my number 4. And with this, I'm coming in with this mixture, this brown and black mixture. Let's make sure we've got plenty, because this uses up a goodly amount of paint. An awful lot of it goes to waste, actually, which is a shame, but there you go. So lots of paint. And now I want to come back to this, and I want to wet my brush. But I want it to be a damp brush. I'm looking for, on the piece of paper here, that kind of ability. Because I now want to come in and moving in the same direction. I want to texturise my fur. And this is a dry brush technique used by lots of artists, and you can build up a whole painting just with this technique. Slowly, slowly, be patient. That's wet, leave it alone, Sharon. If it's wet, come away, because it's going to mark your work. So paint on the brush. You don't want it very wet, be careful. Try it on paper first. Because I'd rather have the brush dry and scrub than have it too wet to mark my paper. And let me bring you in a little bit closer so that you can perhaps see what I'm doing a little better. Alright, let's come down here. So with this lovely brush technique, all of a sudden we can create our fur. This is the perfect brush stroke to use for all those tiny, teeny little hairs on the nose that would be so difficult to create. So that's how. And of course, you've got to bear in mind that you can only do this with a rough paper. So the paper, this Bockingford, this lovely Bockingford from St Cuthbert's Mill, is absolutely perfect for that, because my brush is now sweeping across all the mountains in the paper, because it's wibbly bobbly paper, and it's stroking across the mountains, and it's just getting the hills of the paper, if you know what I mean. And that means that we get this lovely texture on our fur. Sounds like I've got fur, doesn't it, the way I'm going on? And if you want more, there you go, just come in and worry at it. You see what I mean about it being a cruel way to treat a good brush. I'm sure Rosemary would be looking at these videos and calling me all sorts of names. But if we do this and we work our way around our kitty, some of it dark, some of it a bit lighter. Here, look, we can now work into this. And pull that through there. But it really works through the lighter areas. Smudge it with your finger if you'd like to. Do that too. I want a bit more of a stripe up round there. Change your colour as well, so I'm using a mixture of burnt umber and Payne's grey, so in there I could really do with a bit of Payne's grey, couldn't I? So I can come in here, pick some of that up. Make sure you don't have too much paint on that there brush though. No, it's too much. That's still too much. That gets me that darker area in there. I can reinforce this now from the corner of his eye through here. Here we are. So just keep on working it. This is the Payne's grey. So this is how I would flick this out through here. Let the brush do the work. This is browner up here, so leave that alone, go back to that in a minute. And through these darker areas later, if you want to, you can add some white. You can pull white through those areas with a brush, white gouache, and that will give you some of your highlights, your lighter fur. I'm going back to this dark area that seemed to evade me every time I was trying to put it in. There we are. You see how you're just building it up slowly, slowly, slowly. It makes the fur look soft and fluffy. More on his nose there. Through there. There's this patch here which is quite dark, isn't it? So we'll put some through there. I'd like to darken this up a little bit. So we're going to just scumble that. The brush is really dry at the moment. So I'm just gently rubbing like that. It needs to be quite a bit dark around his ear. These are teeny tiny little hairs here, and that'll take you a month of Sundays to paint some of that in, so let's do it the easy way, cheats way. A bit more paint. Darker area through there. And that's a bit darker through there as well. There. So you can do as much or as little of that as you want to do until you feel happy with what you've achieved. I want to just put some in there. And then I'd like to pull some through here as well. That's maybe a little bit too dry. Let's try that now. Like that. And if we want some out through here as well, we can do that too. I don't want to do too much down here, because it will distract us and we'll start to look at that instead of the cat's face and the cat's eye. Just want to make sure we've got the muzzle right there. Through here. And this is a little bit darker down here too, where it's folding down. The skin is folding down to his mouth, so just make that a little darker too. So we've reached that stage, so happy with that. Let's just pan out so that we can see what we've achieved and if we like it and if we think it's balanced. It's looking like a cat, isn't it? Definitely looks like a cat. I'd say that was a cat. Okay, all of this needs dealing with now. So here we've got lots of little dark hairs, and for that I think I'd either go back to my rigger brush again and I would load up. Now when you're loading a rigger brush, put the whole brush in the paint because it is a reservoir brush and you need the whole brush to be wet, so that you don't get dry brush strokes. And into this now, I'm going to come through here and I'm going to be using the tip of the brush to come through. So up the edge. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't want that blob there. Right, if you've done that and made a mistake, damp brush. Can you see what I'm doing here? Don't think I can get close enough for you to really see. I've got a blob there. I just want to come in, just lift it off with that brush so that I can go back, introduce all those little hairs up through the ears. Tip of that brush, 90 degrees you're using that. Tip, tip, tip. Tipped over the brush. And for the tips of his ears, so let's pan you right out so that you can see what I'm going to do with the tips. I want to use the dark paint, and this time I'm coming in from the tips of those ears, because this little cat has got these beautiful little tufts on his ears. So put the hair in first. I'd like some of that to be really quite dark with Payne's grey. I've just splattered that on the picture. Well done, Sharon. So up here, just goes to show it's live, doesn't it, at the moment? Won't be by the time I've edited it. Now, round here, do we need some through there, everybody? Yes, we probably might. Let's do that. And I want to just reinforce that edge to that ear there. And then what I want to do here is dampen the brush down, and I'm going to come in and I want to smudge that, all of it, smudge it. And then to soften this harshness around this edge here, take the paint, pull it round there, pull it round here, and I'm going to come down there with the brush and soften both of those edges. But it gives me a nice edge then to the hair, and I want to pull that up round there, and again just softened like that. Right, so that's good. If you find that all of this is too stark and you don't like the looks of that, that's manageable as well, because we can go in with a damp brush and just soften, 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 gently, gently like that. So we can do that too. Through this area here with hairs, it might make it more interesting if we load our brush with the darker colour, and again use the whole brush. Make sure there's nothing on the ferrule, so I'm just going to wipe it. I don't want that drop running down into the work, and I'm now going to just put across a few dark hairs, just for a little bit of contrast. It will just make it look a little more interesting to fill the space of the ears. Smudge that. If we land up with the edges showing, just smudge it. So can you see that? Let's have a look. So I've just been through the ears with the dark paint, introducing some darker marks, just to make it look more interesting. Okay. I want to get hold of my mask away, because I'd like to see if those lights show in the eyes, and yes they do. Again, if you find those too harsh, you can just come in and soften some of it by just blending the colour that's underneath. So don't be afraid if you think that they're too harsh. Let's have a look and see what our highlight looks like through there. And with that, what I want to do is, taking the zero brush, let's give the impression that we're actually looking at, the cat is looking at something and it's reflecting. First thing I want to do is come in here and tighten up that edge. And then I'm going to smarten that up, because reflections are really quite tight sometimes, so I don't want it to be fractured and blurry. And again, with a damp brush I can just blend that away. But I notice that in the picture the cat's, obviously there's a reflection there, so I'm taking my bluey black and I just want to drop in the impression of something in that cat's eye. All right. Soften, soften, soften all the time. Okay, so we have a reflection in our cat's eye. He's still not dark enough around this nose. The nose is driving me nuts. Come on, let's get this nose right. So up through here, dark, dark, dark. Put it in, soften it up. Okay. Oh, something else I can see looking at the picture. I want to take the dark and I'm coming all the way down here. Through there, and I just want to reinforce that again to give you that movement on the eye. There's a bit of shadow there. There we are. Now, shall we see what this looks like now when we take the white hair away from the ears? Is that dry? There we are. The whiskers. And this away. And then taking your blunt brush, let's just make this become part of this and grow out of that. I'm going to do that with a damp brush, and we're just going to smudge all of that. Come quite a way in. Bleed the colour that's underneath. And do that along there as well, because then it makes it look as though it's coming out of shadow. And there. Do we need to do that anywhere else? Yes, we might need to do some there actually, because you don't want it to scream at you, do you? That's better. We need maybe a little bit more along here. This is 1, 2, 3 little follicles for the hair. So come in above it. There we are. This, I'm going to just soften that as well. There we are. I'm just going to bleed some of that too, so that that's not too harsh. And I think maybe we need a bit of shadow through there, so just pull a bit of colour through. If that means that this isn't dark enough, go back in, drop a bit of colour in there. And the key is, all of the time, you being aware of how much water you're using and manipulating that water until you can get it to the wetness that you require. I'd like to take this orangey colour, so this is our burnt sienna, and again, just a damp brush. I'm just going to... That's a bit more orange than the picture, but I want to bring it down. I don't want that to be the only orange splodge in the picture. Okay, and your only other choice is there now is to think seriously about the whiskers, because if some of those whiskers come out of the white areas and you're not seeing them, then maybe you need to take a grey or a brown, and some of them you might need to just do that and that. It needs to make sense, doesn't it? I'm just going to... And anything else that you want to do with that to embellish it, you might want to take a thin brush and very thin paint, and you might now want to come out and introduce some little hairs. But I think I'm going to leave that up to you. For now, that's our little cat. Let's just pan out so that you can see him a little better. That's our cat in watercolour. Not an easy task, everybody, let's be honest, but it's been interesting, hasn't it? Thank you for joining me.